In this next video, I'm going to show you how to use something I call the pitch transition. And this is when you simply take an instrument and change the pitch over time, where you create a sort of rising effect or a sort of dropping effect. Now, this is a little bit different than the stop transition, because with the stop transition, we were doing the pitch change so that it happens really quickly. And with this pitch transition, you can stretch it out to happen over a longer period of time. There's also a couple different ways you can apply this pitch transition, and I'll show you what those are. What you're looking at now is a track where I have a small breakdown in between two sections, and the drums drop out and you're left with these melodies, and it creates this kind of pitch shifting effect to where it rises and it makes it feel like the track is kind of lifting up before it gets to the next section. So I'll show you what this sounds like and then I'll break it down for you. So you can hear in this section, the pitch is shifting up and it's changing pitch over time through this breakdown section. So there's a few ways that you can do this, and I'll show you what those are. One way, if you're not too familiar with sound design, would be to just find some riser or shifter effects that you can drop into your track, kind of like this one with this cymatics effect. The other element that I'm using here is this Razor synth, and I'm using it and just walking the notes up. So I'm creating kind of a stair step effect with the pitch change. So where this cymatics riser was actually kind of smoothly transitioning from one pitch all the way up to the next, it didn't sound like a step transition. I'm actually creating this step transition here in this Razor synth. So this gets really easy to do if you know the key of the song, and you can just simply play through the notes in the key of that song and just walk up that scale. Now, another way you can do this is to grab a synth. So I have a massive synth right here, and I just have one note that's playing through this whole section. So it sounds like this. All right, so it's the same note that plays through the whole time. Now what we can do is we can create a smooth kind of pitch change effect. Now if we go into this massive plugin, you can use what's called an LFO, and we can take this LFO 8, because this one is available. It's not being used anywhere else inside of this preset. So we can take this LFO and we can drop it here on the pitch of the oscillator. And then we just simply change the pitch here so that it's going to change pitch over time. And I'll drop that on each one of these oscillators. And I'll set it to 24 semitones, which is 2 octaves. So it's going to change by 2 octaves. And now what I'll do is I'll set the sync so that way it's synced to the tempo of the song. Now a ratio of 1/16 means that it's 1/16 means that it's going to happen every 16th note, which is too fast. So you see it sounds kind of messy. So we'll change this ratio to 1. And we'll switch it to 16/1. And what that means, it's going to happen over a longer period of time. So instead of every 16th note, it's going to happen over the course of 16 measures. So now it sounds like this. It's going to follow this sloping trend that you have here on this waveform here inside of the LFO. Depending on how you set up the semitones, if you go plus 24 or minus 24, it's either going to go from really low to really high, or it's going to start really high and go to really low. So it sounds like this. So now you can hear that we have that rising kind of pitch effect. So I can add this back into the track. Now I can have this playing in with everything else and just mix the levels so it kind of sits in there with everything. So it might sound a bit cluttered with everything else that's going on in there, but that's just to give you an example of how you can create this rising kind of smooth pitch transition. And again, you can do it in the opposite direction as well. So for example, with this one, because we set it to minus 24 semitones, that means it's starting low and going high. So we can go in the opposite direction and put it to plus 24 on each one of these and go from high to low. So we can do it in the opposite direction. I have one more example for you where you can take audio and you can transpose it or kind of pitch it down to create this pitch shifting effect. So this is a great way to create a similar effect with just using audio samples. So what I did was I chopped up this audio sample and I created this kind of trap remix of this South Park spoof on the Game of Thrones. And I just chopped up this one sample and I pitched down each sample. So you can look here and where it says transpose, this first chop is at -5. And then this next one is a -6, 7, -8, -9, -10, all the way down. And so it creates this effect here where it kind of is pitching down this sample. And then at the same time, I took the snare sample, this kind of clap snare, and what I did was I created this pitching up effect after it pitches down. And I did the same exact thing where I went to this transpose and I duplicated it, and then I went up 1 semitone, then I duplicated it, and then I went up 2 semitones, duplicated the next one, went up 3 semitones, and so on, all the way up until the end. All right. And so it creates this pitching down effect with this vocal sample that you see here. So this is where it pitches down. And then after that, it pitches up. So you can just as easily create this pitching effect using nothing but audio samples, just like you would if you were to use a synthesizer. When you're using these audio chops, it might have more of this stepped kind of sounding pitch change. And with synthesized sounds, you can have more of a smooth transitioning kind of pitch shift. It just depends on how you'd like to make use of this pitch effect in your track and what tools you have available.